Set smaller little targets. Create opportunities for momentum. Realize that all of the shit that people talk about, you need to have a good first shift, and if you have a good first shift, you have a good rest of the game. If you make a big hit, then you have a good game. No, you want to realize that your brain just wants you to be winning. So if you don't feel like you're winning, it's going to mess with your ability to feel confident because that dopamine is going to be down. You're going to feel weird. If you're the type of player who you base your confidence in the game, fundamentally, it's based purely on how well you played in that first shift. You think, if I play a good shift, then I'm going to have a good game. If I have a bad first shift, it will be a bad game. If that's you, I want to explain to you how to get out of this entire belief, because fundamentally, I first want to start with, that is a bullshit belief. It's just not an accurate belief. You can have a terrible first shift. You can have a terrible second, third, fourth, fifth. You can even have a terrible 90% of your shifts, all except one. You can still have a good shift at some point. Now, I'm not saying your goal should obviously be to have a bunch of bad shifts, but what I'm saying is that the belief that one shift dictates the next is a complete false reality. It's just not accurate. And the way you can think of this is that in general, you can think of it that you always have access to a certain amount of ability, right? So you have a certain amount of ability that you have access to at any given time. And the way you can think of ability kind of functioning is you have mental ability. So I'll just put mental. You have IQ. So mental ability, hockey IQ ability. You have physical ability. The last one is mechanical. Now, I teach this to very high-level players, USHL, Division I, professional, all the way up to the AHL. And you have to realize that if you get caught up in this belief that the first shift dictates everything, well, what you're ignoring is this idea that you always have a certain amount of ability you can access. So this is ability that is accessible. Honestly, I always spell this word wrong, so I'm not going to look it up, so you can roast me for spelling it wrong. But the point is that whenever we think about the first shift, what we're ignoring is that each shift exists in its own world. So you can think of this as, I'll put S for shift, and imagine you play a certain amount of shifts per game. The thing is that the interconnection between these, so basically kind of thinking about it from the perspective of how this shift basically kind of like connects to this one, you have to realize that this is all just a mental connection. And you want to know why that's true? Is because if I could erase your memory right now, and I could simply just erase the experience of this shift, well, even though it happened, you would have no actual idea that that shift happened. And so whenever we think of the first shift, for example, so we can think of it this way. So I'll draw this in a couple colors, so I'll get rid of this. If we say, okay, so good shift, so I'll just put G. Then we think, okay, good shift guarantees, good. And then it obviously continues. I'll just put 3. That's what we think. It's good shift, good shift, good shift. Obviously the same thing. If we think bad equals bad equals bad, right? And we're convinced that this is the way that the world operates, it's just not accurate. So what you have to realize is that whatever happens in the shift is not actually connected to the next one except for whatever connection you have in your mind, whatever your mind connects the dots to. And so the way you can think of this is that this kind of false connection we have between here, obviously that is a memory, but the way you can actually think of this at a fundamental level is that the interconnection of these things all coming together, this is all a story. It is the story you are telling yourself about what happened in the past. So past, you have present, and I'll get rid of this just for the sake of connecting the dots, past, present, and then future. Why does this matter? Well, because if you think of these as past, you could say this is like present shift, this is future shift. If you live in a world where whatever happens in the past is guaranteed to lead to, okay, this is what's about to happen, well, that would still be future, but that's what's happening and that's what's going to happen. And what we're doing is we take the past and we bring it up into our future. But it's not true. What happens in the past is not what happens in the future. You were a baby once. You're not a baby now, right? You've made mistakes. You don't just automatically make the same mistake. That is the distinguishing thing you have to be able to do, is that in any given moment, in any shift, each of these being a shift, you always have the same amount of ability accessible, generally speaking. Obviously, if you're physically tired. Like for example, during a shift, you can think of it like this, like during a shift, what happens to your energy is obviously during the shift, your cardio level, so your ability to basically access the amount of energy you need to perform kind of goes like this, right? And it kind of then, it kind of levels off, and you can still, this is how when you get stuck out, like say this is like 45 seconds, right? But if you run it for 2 minutes, you can do this. And then even if you run for like 3 minutes, you can probably stay pretty close to the same. Because our body has this ability to kind of output a certain amount of energy that it kind of maintains. I say this because if you start to think of your game in this way of, I always have a certain amount of ability accessible, your goal as a player is to always increase, right? You should be thinking, how can I increase the amount of ability I have? But in any given moment, it doesn't matter what's happened. I want to be clear. It doesn't fucking matter at all what has happened in the past events, mistakes, whatever, good shift, bad shift, neutral shift, in between, whatever. It's not actually going to dictate what is going to happen. What's happening right now, it doesn't dictate what's going to happen in the future unless you allow this story to happen. But at the end of the day, you in your mind have to be able to realize that if you can be in the present, the past was just a present moment. It happened. Now you're in the present. If you're projecting out into the future, that is you just creating a movie. This is a movie. The past shift is a movie you have in your head. The future is a movie you have in your head. I'll write this just to really make it clear that this is a movie. This is a movie. And when you start to think of it this way, this is real. This is the only real thing. And so whatever has happened in the past is not controlling the present. Whatever is going to happen in the future, we don't know. The only thing I like to do when I think of how to treat the past and the future is I like to simply say, okay, whatever has happened, I like to just think of it as envision. It's working. Things are working. If it was bad, it means I learned a lesson, and then it's going to be good now. So you're always kind of in your mind projecting basically like a positive, right? You're always just thinking like positive in the past, which then is going to lead to a positive. This is so obvious, which leads to a positive. That is it. That's all you want to do. And I'm not saying this because you want to show positive affirmations in the mirror and pretend like the world is amazing, because at the end of the day, what is the point of telling yourself a negative movie? If you could go to the movie theater right now, why would you watch a shitty movie? If you could go to the movie theater right now and watch another movie, why would you pick a shitty movie? Anytime. Why would you choose to play a movie that you don't like, that doesn't help you, that doesn't benefit you, that's not fun? It doesn't benefit you. And so whenever you think like, I'm going to rely on the first shift, all you're really doing is saying, I'm going to rely on like creating a movie that, again, I'm creating. You don't even oftentimes remember what's happened in the past. You have to remember that when we say movie, the movie that we construct in our mind, this is actually very important, is a constructed movie. The way to actually see this is, say this is reconstruction. Our brain actually reconstructs what we remember from the past. So sometimes we will have a false memory of what really happened because we create it again in our mind and it was very emotionally charged. Maybe sometimes we add things. This is a very common phenomenon that we will actually have things that have happened that we think happened a certain way, but then maybe there'll be video of it and we'll review back and realize, oh my God, that's not actually what happened. That's insane, right? It's because we reconstruct what happened. When we're going into the future, we are also constructing that. We're almost reconstructing it in a way, but it hasn't happened. So we're creating a projection out into the future. And so you have to realize that no matter what is happening, all that ever happens is in the current moment, you have what you have accessible to you. You have to get it through your brain. I'm saying this because I have a bunch of players that have dealt with this. You have to get it through your brain. What is happening in this moment, if we think of it as the present, this is the only real moment, and the only thing that's real is you have accessible. All the abilities that you have had don't go away. You have the same mental ability, IQ ability. Physical, again, kind of goes down with cardio. Mechanics stay generally the same, but obviously as cardio kind of goes down and as your energy output goes down, your mechanics can start to fall apart. Thus why you should learn to train while you're fatigued as well, so that you also learn how to keep your mechanics going while you're tired. But fundamentally, all of this comes down to, I just want to reiterate this point, that it's not about relying on the first shift. It's not about relying on the future. It's not about relying on your coach said, oh my God, I'm going to give you so much ice time. Your coach, ripped on you and said you sucked before and said, oh, you played bad. That's all a reconstructive thing. That's your brain basically remembering and trying to project out. None of that is real. So how do you actually fix this? What is the solution to fixing this? I'm going to break this down for you so you can stop being so reliant on the constant need for, has the past been good, right? And I'll say this. What I don't want you guys to do is to get caught up in this place of saying, I need the past to be good in order to justify my belief that the present is good or that the future is going to be good. Instead, realizing no matter what happened in the past, it is always a fresh moment. It's always a fresh moment that you are living into. So you don't need to rely on whatever happened in the first shift. You don't need to rely on anybody's praise. You simply want to realize each moment you have whatever ability you have, that's what you get. You have that, and then you go and you make the best possible play. And obviously for my clients, we've talked about this idea of flexibility and understanding that the moment is a spectrum and not just a right and wrong thing. You don't just make a good play or a bad play. It is a range of good plays, a range of plays that, and I'll break this down a little bit. You can think of it as, imagine this is like the worst possible play, and you can think of this as like 100 being like the best possible play. You're never really going to make the best possible play in any situation, because what's the best play? Like you could always say, oh, I could have been a bit more deceptive. I could have Zorro'd the guy. He hit me and I flipped over him. Like in any play, there's always a way you can make like a better play. And the worst play theoretically is like, I don't know, you shoot it in your own net, you slide into the boards, you get hurt or something. Like, there's a worst theoretically. But most of the game exists in this kind of middle range, and it is a spectrum of a million different possible plays you can make in any situation. You take a shot, there's millions of types of shots you could take. And so the key is realizing that most of the game is played like within, a range of like, say this is 80%, like 80% ideal. There's probably still 20% of things I could have done better, right? Could have done better, right? In this case. So that's the key in realizing, yes, there's still a range here. Most of the game is going to happen somewhere in this range, and it's simply your ability to say, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to make the best possible play, and wherever I land, I'm simply going to think, how can I make a better play? I land here, how can I make a better play? Here, how can I make a better play? Here, make a better play. It's just simply saying, how can I make a better play next time? And you set a forward thought into what I'm going to do next. You don't look into the past and keep working yourself up about it. It's just, how could I be better? So there's that. Now, the other piece to this whole first shift reliance thing is to think about how dopamine works in your brain. So if you're in the accelerator, you've listened to me explain this idea of playing your game, where you get your dopamine from, and why that stuff is so important. But simply put, what you want to do is you want to realize that your brain, when you have dopamine in your system, dopamine is what gets you to do this. It's what basically drives you to take a forward action. So it gets you to move forward into the next thing because it believes, and this is going to be a really rough trophy, but it believes that it's going to get a benefit. This is supposed to be some kind of trophy, right? So dopamine fundamentally is the thing that drives you forward. So you can think it as drives forward. It drives you forward. And so any time that you find yourself not being driven forward towards something, it's like, well, most of the time it's a dopamine issue in the sense of you don't feel enough dopamine, enough excitement that drives you and gets you to take the action. And so when you think about how you can think of first shift kind of benefit, like how do you dominate a first shift? How do you feel like you're actually just always having that dopamine that drives you forward? Well, what you want to do is think dopamine is also this thing that makes you feel like you're winning. So if you think about it in terms of this idea, I always like to think of like a game where there is a bunch of coins in front of you. You can think of them as checkpoints, whatever you want to kind of call them. But the point being is that these coins, you can think of them as these are little checkpoints that you move towards and you get it. And then what happens is that your mind feels a win. And so you basically step forward, you win. And now what happens is that dopamine goes up. And then it's, okay, boom, I move forward, you get the next checkpoint and dopamine goes up and you get the next checkpoint and up. And so this is what it feels like to have this kind of constant winning happening in a game. How you do this is you set smaller targets. You don't just say, okay, there's all these things I got to do and then I'll score a goal over here and I'll be, yay, happy smiley face because I scored a goal on this one right here. Instead, what you think is, what are all these little checkpoints I can create in between where my brain feels that little dopamine bump, and you feel like you're winning. And when you do that, you feel more motivated, you feel more driven to pursue the next thing. And so like, for example, say you're here, again, I'll just keep drawing random stick figures here. But imagine, in this case, with this stick figure, you think of it as, okay, you want to make a hit, right? And I'm going to make a hit. That's the target. And you're going to feel a big boost of dopamine when you make a big hit, right? Big dopamine. Dopamine's going to spike. But what you want to do is think, well, how can I create more of these spikes throughout, which make me feel more motivated as I move towards that hit? So it's like, okay, I get a little dopamine when I identify, right? Like identify the guy. Once you identify the guy, then it's like find angle. And then it's like move into the hit, right? Right? And what this does, to be clear, is when this dopamine fires, it creates this motivation to get to the next thing. Motivation. So there's this saying that people have, which is, it's a really weird saying. I was just explaining this to one of my clients right before this. This idea of you can't eat an elephant all in one bite. If you want to eat an elephant, you eat it like in bites at a time. I have no idea where that came from, but why I say this for you guys is because for you, and I know you're one of the players in the program watching this right now, I want you to think of this as it's very key to realize that the smaller these little targets are, the more winnable they are, the better you're going to feel because you're going to feel these little spikes of dopamine, winning. Your brain wants you to be winning. That's basically what it wants. It wants wins. It wants wins. It hates losses. So when you take too long to accomplish a goal, imagine this is literally scoring a goal. It takes too long, too many times where you're like, what happens is it starts to feel like these are actually losses, right? And they're actually make you feel worse, They make you feel worse. And so that's why in your first shift, when people say, go out and just make a big hit, I say, go out and just identify an opportunity for a hit, find an angle, move towards the hit, let the hit happen. If it doesn't happen, circle back again, right? Wherever you work towards it. If you hit it, awesome. If you don't get the hit, you work your way back and then you climb back up. And it's just climbing the mountain. You're excited. Oh, I got it. Excited. Okay, I missed it, right? And you just move forward. So that's the key. So going into a game, the moral of the story is set smaller little targets, create opportunities for momentum. Realize that all of the shit that people talk about, you need to have a good first shift. And if you have a good first shift, you have a good rest of the game. If you make a big hit, then you have a good game. No, you want to realize that your brain just wants you to be winning. So if you don't feel like you're winning, it's going to mess with your ability to feel confident because that dopamine is going to be down. You're going to feel weird. But realize that if you're feeling down because you haven't won, then set smaller little targets and work towards those little targets in the game. Hit those little targets. Hit the little target. Build. Just like a metal detector, it gets closer to the metal, it gets louder. That's what I want you to think. Lean into that idea. Small little targets. Move towards them. Let the dopamine spike. Feel really good. Feel like you're winning. Be a winner because you're actually feeling those little wins happening, and then you'll get those bigger wins like scoring goals, making hits, making big plays, getting points, getting more ice time. All that comes from building that momentum and feeling again like a video game, cha-ching, 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 or ding, 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 ding. You want to actually hear the sound of winning. Sound of winning. Literally hear a sound when you do this. Ching, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And it will feel really, really good. It's a hack. Try it. I promise you. Do this in practice. You hold the puck an extra little second. Cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. Change everything. So that's how you get out of that first shift reliance. You realize the first shift doesn't dictate anything, but setting small little targets, small little wins, that is what allows you to play your game, win your game, and be a winner before you hit those bigger goals. And by being a winner, you get more dopamine, you're more driven, you're more motivated, you get more wins in the long run as well. Hope you enjoyed. If you want more videos like this, just keep telling me. I'll keep making more. Give me more topics to dig into. I'll break them down for you guys. The better the questions you ask, the better the answers I can give.